Hey, everybody. Welcome to another brand new episode of the Because Cannabis podcast. Every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Every Thursday on Spotify with video. And anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts, go ahead right now. Before we get any further, stop what you're doing because I'm about to ruin or something like that. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that follow button. Whatever service you're listening to on us right now. By the way, let's pour one out for public radio. We just lost a podcast platform, publicradio.com. Folded their doors this past week, Dustin. I don't know if anybody listened on public radio. We know that the majority of people listen on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts or actually YouTube. But all you other platforms, looking at you, Stitcher, all you other platforms, looking at you, what's that one, Louder? All you other platforms, you're hanging on. But publicradio.com, Dustin, they folded their virtual doors. They hit their .com. They stopped paying their namecheap.com registration. Something happened. It's the death of the podcasting industry overreaction. How you feeling about losing public radio as a fine purveyor of podcasts?
Oh, it's a sad day. A very, very sad day.
Smoke one out. We are here every single week, every single Wednesday, talking cannabis, talking information, talking education. And today we got an exciting interview. We're looking forward to speaking with the executive director of Ohio NORML, Simon Dunkel. We'll talk a little bit of cannabis legalization. We'll talk a little bit about activism in this industry, about what you can do and your rights as a patient, as a consumer, and take a trip in the Wayback Machine and have a little fun with Simon, with some of the folks, some of the stuff that he has done in his past. A pretty interesting and eclectic career to get here. Let me tell you, though, Dustin, you weren't there. You probably stiffed me, didn't show up, no-showed. Told him not to come. You weren't at the big Ohio Issue 2 panel that we hosted recently on the Cleveland School of Cannabis. Simon was there. He was one of the panelists representing. And after we were done talking, Dustin, I ran into a situation that I find myself in repeatedly, and I'm never quite sure how to handle it. And I thought about this recently because I was reading an article. I think it was not Doug Benson. Maybe Doug Benson. What are Doug Benson, Doug Stanhope? It was a Doug that smokes weed and does drugs as a comedian. That's their shtick, right? They do weed, they do that. So this Doug, or maybe it wasn't a Doug. It was a weed-centric comedian. Was talking about how
not even a Doug.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Doug. Well, Doug. It's like Dave. It's like Cheech and Chong. We'll just make them randomly named Doug and Dave. He was talking about how after the set, everyone's always offering him free weed. They're like, "Hey, bro, you smoke this, you got it," because they all want to show off their weed. And at some point, he has to time out and tap out and say, I can't keep consuming it. Plus, if I'm being super real, there's always that thing in the back of your head that says, is this like okay? Is this dude trying to poison me? What's up? And so this is what happened. I found myself presented in a moment with Simon, where Simon presented me 4 what looked like delicious cookies, of which he informed me were infused, which is perfectly legal to do in the state of Ohio. But I had to sit for a moment and say, Simon trying to roofie me? Like, is this a right? Is this legit? I had a moment. I had a thought. Like, what is happening? Right? I don't know sometimes, and I panic, Dustin, in the moment. What do you do? You've been hitting that weed for a long time, as I say, like an old man. What do you do when people offer you free products, especially kind of like to consume later? Do you get wary at all? Or are you just like, oh, because I know a dude, if you're like, hey, here's an Ed, and before you get the bowl out, that thing is down his throat. It's like, here's an Ed. He's like, oh, all right, thank you. I'm like, you didn't know the milligrams. You don't know what else. They're just eating edibles, stacks upon stacks. What do you do, Dustin, when someone gives you free product? You consume willy-nilly? Do you get nervous? What's your process?
I do, man. I guess it's just my age now, but I do not accept weed from other people normally. I would say back in the day when I was a young kid, hell yeah, fucking whatever you got, hand it over, like I don't care. In fact, fucking roofie me. I mean, hell.
Wow. Slow down, Dustin Kava. Slow down. I believe that's illegal. We don't want to do that. Don't roofie Dustin Kava, anyone, please.
But as I've gotten older, no, man, there's so much more to worry about. Maybe I just can't handle my own anymore. I don't know. But I've had more than enough situations where it was a little too much, and I wish I would have known ahead of time.
It is careful. I'll tell you what, let's bring in the man himself. Let's bring him right on stage right now. Simon, as you hear that, first off, first reaction, are you offended that I questioned your free cannabis product?
Not at all. I mean, it's the 21st century, got to be wary. But
You do
I
have
have
to
been
be
making
wary.
I've been making them for 40 years, and I'm not gonna pass them out in that venue if there's something hinky going on, because prison has never appealed to me.
Yeah, it
And
doesn't suit me well either. That's a very valid point. We're talking with Simon Dunkel, the executive director of Ohio NORML. We're a little bit more about Simon's backstory in a second, but we got to talk shop here. So to let you know, Simon, I did consume all of those for the next 4 nights in a row. That was my evening kind of downtime there. It made it for a quite enjoyable evening, if I'm being honest. They were quite both working to the effect intended, and if I'm being honest, Simon, they were pretty delicious as well. Like, so it wasn't just a not too heavy on the cannabis taste, which is my first biggest pet peeve. If I'm consuming an edible, I usually don't want it to taste too much like the plant material. Where do you guys sit on that? When you consume an edible, do you love to just taste the weed in it? Or are you like, thank goodness this tastes like a cinnamon snickerdoodle, bro? I don't want to put my weed in my cinnamon snickerdoodle. I want it to get me high, but I don't want the weed in my cinnamon snickerdoodle.
yeah,
Right? I mean, am I wrong on this? Am I just a noob?
Oh no, I think it's about, with age, I appreciate more a subtle flavor as opposed to the full on. And the infusion process with that particular edible is something where the flower actually degrades into it. So there's no straining or anything else. So it dissolves into the whole thing. So I think there were 9 grams of I-71 from Galena's over 75 servings. That came out to about 25 milligrams each.
I have to say, it is exciting that is finally okay, though. As much as I usually don't take something from someone else, knowing that it's okay right now to give a little when someone's down, or to share in my passion for the last 20 years. I don't know. I think it's finally, I'm happy to see Ohio transition to that.
Yeah, I mean, and in my situation physically with what I've got going on, I need probably about 200 milligrams a day from THC and probably 100, 150 milligrams of CBD just to maintain. Seems outrageous to people, but that's the reality that I've come to, and that's where I am, and that's what I'm doing. So, and those things in particular, I mean, it's organic all the way through, including the I-71 from Galena's. And then it's 3 components of coconut, all organic. So it's non-dairy, and of course, also, gosh, what's the other one? Oh gosh, the allergy with flour or whatever. I can't think of it. Gluten. There it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, damn stoner.
Yeah, it happens sometimes. You fall into those holes. Well, that's a good transition then, as we're talking with Simon Dunkel, the executive director of Ohio NORML. One of the things, Simon, I want to give you a chance to talk a little bit about what you're doing with Ohio NORML and kind of where Ohio NORML, or even NORML as an organization, stands today in a culture that is moving forward with legalization in that era. So in a time frame, and I know one of the things you highlighted was something like that, like the ability to gift, which exists in Ohio currently in a very gray area. We know the rules will be defined at some point, but that was something that you kind of fought for and advocated during that conversation, is that right to gift this product, that right to hand it out to people without fear, that right to transport it on you or possess it in your home without fear of law enforcement. So can you talk a little bit about the importance of that, and then kind of how you have fit with NORML and what NORML's role is today?
Well, I as far as NORML, I mean, I think, at least in my case, they're transitioning towards consumer rights, patient advocacy, and that type of thing. And that's where I came in as far as being executive director of Ohio NORML, or them giving me the chapter, which happened in December of 22.
Yeah, it's been a year.
And I'd proven that basically the medical program was for purchase, not use. And I'd worked for Vern Rife, 114th General Assembly, Speaker of the House, Merle Shoemaker, Morris Tipton, and a lady by the name of Betty Black, who's probably the world's greatest unknown, unelected official. She made things work like you wouldn't believe. But anyway, the standard was, if you got past 3 entities in the state that should pay attention to a particular problem and they ignored it, It was then escalated to the speaker's office because they considered it a state's conspiracy that the particular subject, 2, 3 people that should have picked it up didn't, and then the speaker ran with it, or his office did, at a higher level than just me. So I got 14 agencies. 2 responded. Job and Family Services said ask for a hearing, which I did. Didn't get due process. Department of Insurance Regulations said we can't do anything about what they did, but we can do something about how they did it. And what they did was I had for 4.5 years gotten trips to dispensaries, and they cut me off cold.
Wow.
Process, no hearings, no nothing. And so, yeah, I've been fighting them the whole time. Finally, Medicaid escalated to Teams meetings. So we bypassed hearing and went to investigation. So I've got my second meeting with them this Thursday. And basically my end goal there is to get patients and people that work at dispensaries that need transportation through Medicaid, disability transport, can get it so that they can work, so that they can get their medication, so that they can interact. Because they're blocking me from working right now. I have several companies that want to consult with me or hire me as a consultant, but they won't let me travel there because it has to do with marijuana. They gave me trips to Athens all last summer 5 or 6 times while I was staying at the Cannabis Museum, the first overnight guest at the museum ever, which was kind of cool. But then in the end, they cut me off when I had a meeting with 3 landlords, or 3 possibly for apartments, and a job opportunity the night before I was supposed to go. So it was this kind of thing. And I'm just trying to make sure that doesn't happen to other people, and basically get them to own up that they can do this. If they go through, county Job and Family Services, the money comes from the state and from the county, not from the feds. So there's no reason to deny it. There's no out there for them. So
I never ever.
That's what I'm trying to do with that.
For as much as even owning the retail shop, we would have a lot of transportation organization that would help drop off people at the store, and we would get them their products and they would be able to leave and go back home. And the amount of scheduling and planning, that was difficult, but I never ever thought about, as a patient in Ohio, what happens if you don't have a caregiver to help make those drives for you, or cannot find a way to get to where you got to go because of cannabis, and being denied certain things, or even fighting for that right in the first place. It never occurred to me. And I'm super surprised that that's
well, and it's carried over to other parts of my situation. I mean, there's a poster from the issue 2 event, which even surprised me. It's the first time I've ever seen it in sort of poster form. But all the discrimination, all the crap. I mean, with insurance, with housing, with medical care. I was refused transportation by EMS, Toledo EMS. I ran into the evil doppelganger of Patton Oswalt, and he happened to be driving an EMT van. And he got out and told me in no uncertain, sarcastic terms that he didn't like marijuana users. And I asked him how he knew it. He said, "It's in your record." And I'm like, how do you have that? And he proceeded to tell me I was having a massive anxiety attack and wasn't transportable. And then I pulled down my shirt to show him the knot between my neck and my shoulder, and said, "What do I do about this?" And he said, go see a doctor. But I'd called on the behest of my nurse practitioner and my orthopedist. And I was refused. They drove off.
And it's something that, do you think as states go legal, so does Ohio going adult use, does that help any of this? Does it hurt it? I don't know if you know your experience working with maybe some other states, but as Ohio maybe moves to adult use, it feels like there should be a little bit more leeway, but then you're dealing with these state organizations who are handling it, I think it's tricky. I don't know. Does anyone have information, either one of you, on, do you think adult use makes it easier to deal with these types of disability restrictions and cannabis usage?
Well, I think in my case it did for sure. I mean, no question of it. And I brought up in the issue 2 event, it looks like intent to me. Like they want to point out marijuana smokers. They want a certain amount of difficulty and harassment over it because they don't like it, they don't approve of it, and they really don't want to do it. And I think you see that playing out now with the House just being complacent and not doing anything, just kind of we don't really have to do anything until the Department of Commerce calls us. You know what I mean? This sort of, all of a sudden off the back burner kind of thing, where it's not as anxious. And it's like they've created a whole sort of vacuum for the courts and for law enforcement where, okay, it's legal to have, 12 plants for 2 people in a household. You can have 2.5 ounces and 15 grams of concentrate if you're traveling outside the household. But, there's no anti-discrimination law. There's no, you get cities that are backing out all over the state. I mean, and so it's just, it just creates a vacuum, and it's not good for anybody. Because right now, like we were talking about those macaroons, you can only really give it away. I mean, the medical program is for purchase, not use, and the recreational program is for use and not purchase. So, I mean, that's what we created without anti-discrimination law or without, any criminal justice reform.
Do you think that the demographic, Ohio is a pretty varied state in terms of how many people within the cities and how many people in more of rural areas. Do you think that the needs are the same throughout the entire state? Or do you think that, how do you balance that how do you balance having a voice for both sides of the spectrum and putting the right attention towards those things in equal amounts?
Well, I mean, I think there's, if there's relevance in what the opposition says, I have no problem with it. But it's these fallacies they come up with, like a number of people in the legislature, about the fentanyl issue. And it's like, look, call BCI. I did. They'll tell you there's no documented cases. Because what happens is hospitals see fentanyl and they die because of fentanyl. They don't look at the vehicle that it came in. They look at it was fentanyl. So it doesn't matter, like if it's Prince, if it was a bad Percocet, it was a fentanyl death, right? Same thing with marijuana. They don't look at the fact it was the marijuana. It was fentanyl that killed them. So that's what goes on death certificate, whatever. So, I mean, that may be part of the problem. I'll give them that, but that's about all I'm going to give them because we haven't seen it. And Speaker Huffman, Pro Tem Speaker Huffman in the Senate just beats that drum pretty constant and talks about how we didn't know what we voted for. Yet we got, the third highest margin of victory of legalization in the country at 57%, in a red state. So, I mean,
Right.
we don't know what we're doing. Wait a minute, hold on. I mean, and they're the ones that are holding it up. And I mean, Governor DeWine's jumping up and down saying we need immediate access through dispensaries. And if you remember back, they were talking about how medical program was sort of going to be always closed. And if we ever had rec, it was going to be with a note from a doctor, right? And, that lingered until issue 2. But yeah, so, I mean, here we are in this weird spot where, like I said, it's legal for purchase, not use, and legal for use, not purchase, depending on which one you're trying to do.
It gets interesting as a whole, though, because now you're sitting in Ohio, which, we obviously have some folks like Huffman and them who are really fighting seemingly against it. DeWine feels to me like he is just like, fine, like you stoners want it. Let's just make it happen. So I'll applaud him for that in a bit. But here's what's happening, Simon. Since Ohio's gone legal, we've seen it quickly within a couple of states. Only one state or 2 states so far, I know Illinois, has passed adult use through legislative measures, but both Pennsylvania and Virginia in this past week, states right there that we're hoping, Ohio was hoping for their tourism dollars, are seeing what Ohio is doing, and maybe accurately so, understanding that if Ohio goes legal, all these other states below it, they might as well, because they're going to go to Ohio to get it. Do you think Ohio will go slow enough that some states like Pennsylvania and such could actually catch up and supersede them?
I don't think they're moving quick enough. I don't, I don't think it's an overnight or 9-month window thing they can beat right now. Because I mean, we're looking at November, hopefully at the latest. So,
yeah, it's definitely fall at the earliest. Definitely 9-1 at the earliest.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what we're looking at theoretically. So I don't see other states, given their positions in the race, so to speak. I don't see them passing us up right now. I mean, unless the Senate jives in and screws it up royally. But the House seems to have some decent control over things. DeWine, you know, I mean, with his son being a lobbyist for Clutch, I'm sure he's had some interesting Thanksgiving dinners. You know, and I thank his son for that.
This is some dinners like at the Dunkel household, hitting the macaroons.
What'd you say?
This is some dinners like at the Dunkel household where we're popping some dessert and got some infused cannabis stuffing. I hope we get the whole treat.
Oh gosh, yeah, you should have been there. I mean, my grandfather was a judge and worked on the Manhattan Project with Truman, and my dad's an ATF agent and attorney, and they got around talking directly with my mom's side of the family by speaking Latin at dinner. So that's how I got to learn to speak some Latin.
Wow.
So yeah, it was interesting upbringing, but yeah, always a way around something, right?
I'm still picturing what would have happened at night at the museum, at the Cannabis Museum. Like, I feel like there's a movie, like there's a Harold and Kumar kind of movie waiting to happen. If animals and such can, like, have you seen what happens not under the influence of drugs at the Standard History Museum in New York? Imagine what comes to life in the nighttime at the Cannabis Museum.
I mean, you know, now that it's legal, it's probably different, but you know, I wasn't wetting hemp or anything.
Yeah, I want like little joints to come alive, be like, Simon.
Oh no,
believe
me, no, it's in a beautiful spot down there by the river, and there's a nice deck, and I spent, you know, a lot of the evening overnight just out on the deck, partaking and, you know, listening to wildlife and whatever, watching the deer. So,
I'm still picturing Teddy Roosevelt running in on the horse, holding
yeah, that didn't happen, but it was really enjoyable because it ended up, you know, oh, you're going to be the first one, and then it was like 4 or 5 times, you know. So I feel like I need to send him like a $5 bill with like something signed.
So was your upbringing very anti-drugs then? I mean, having like presidential, like really kind of that type of leaning along with law enforcement in the family. Did you grow up in a very reefer madness, just say no household?
No.
Oh no.
Yeah,
They put the alcohol and tobacco in the ATF, so to speak.
Well, see, you know, that was the thing I taunted my dad about. Was he was an alcoholic, smoked like 3 or 4 packs a day, and I said to him, well, you know, you got the alcohol and tobacco down, they're going to give you a free firearm, so I guess you're in, man. You know, and he hated that, but I liked it. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of how the country is now, is what I grew up in. My mom's side of the family was devoutly Republican. Grandmother was the finance manager for the 1960 run in Ohio for Nixon. She was a merry money person. Married and divorced 4 times before I was born. Ended up marrying the nephew of Thomas Watson, who started IBM.
You're like a
So
podcast.
that was,
You're like a true history podcast.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
You're like a true history podcast with the family backdrops and the things that it's like a
Oh,
Dateline episode waiting to happen.
Yeah, I refer to myself as Forrest Chump. I just kind of landed in it, you know.
I feel like you've been around enough politicians to like, what has been the most creative opposition you've heard from a politician for cannabis?
For or against?
Against.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's just so many. I mean, the ignorance is just blinding, and into the propaganda stuff, just starting with Anslinger and going through who held on to that and how they used it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, I used to, I'd come into the house, grandmother's house, like on Friday night after work and whatever, and like for like 3 weeks in a row, damn near ran over Tom Moody, who was the mayor of Columbus, coming down the steps, because, you know, and he was drunk off his ass. And we inevitably ended up in conversations about decriminalization and marijuana. And next door to my grandmother was the Wolf family, and Richard Wolf was the guy that got together with NORML and decrimmed Ohio back in '75, 100 grams or less.
Wow.
So that was always going on, and that was a conversation. My grandmother had the Oregon kind of attitude, which is everybody deserves access to everything. It's their freaking problem.
That's the way. I feel that vibe.
But yeah, so that was pretty radical for a Republican woman of her ilk.
I would say so. Yeah.
But then, you know, there was my dad's side of the family who were just like devoutly, Democrat, liberal. And my grandfather's saying was like, if you're not helping people, why are you here? You know,
I like
but
that.
as a judge, it was an interesting thing. He was a judge in 3 different venues. It was an interesting upbringing. I mean, my parents, I was a free range kid. My parents were pretty much narcissists and, um, raced and rallied Porsches on the weekends and raced sailboats as well. And, so my sister and I were alone a lot, started throwing parties. And I was clerking for my grandfather at like 12 years old because I was 6 feet and 200 pounds. And it was a running joke that I was 12 years old at the courthouse, but everybody laughed because they had to look up to say something.
The 12-year-old kid.
Yeah. So, oh, you're 12. I'm like, yeah. So, I mean, it made for lots of interesting situations, but I mean, I kicked the cops out of our house asking for, show me what your intent was, show what your standard for coming in here was, what was the problem? Where's your warrant? And finally we ended up moving the parties over to my grandmother's house because it was right across from the governor's mansion. Had a party for about 8,000 kids.
I am so nervous about. I'm glad. I feel like the house party era, maybe thanks to the internet, like having all these strangers come over and stuff, that feels like it's a little bit passe. Maybe I'm just out of the loop.
No, I wouldn't do it now. I wouldn't do it now at all. I mean, there'd be guns and all kinds of weird crap.
That'd be weird shit. I was always scared of that growing up. Like I never wanted a party at my house. I never wanted to have. I just didn't want them to break anything. I wanted them nothing near my house.
Yeah, we were the place to go, and then I got kind of radicalized by the lack of accountability from the police. So you needed a federal search warrant to come more than 3 acres back on a property in Bexley. So we had it on the 4th acre down by the creek, and it was the weekend of homecomings for local schools. So the guidance counselor's son had the key to the new Xerox machine. We printed off 10,000, passed them out, and had the party.
That's awesome.
Cops showed up. Our security kicked them out. They insisted to come in. So they had to walk down like 200 stairs down this hill to come down. And I walked up with a bottle of Jack Daniels in one hand and a bong in the other and said, "You're not invited. You're going to have to leave. Got a federal warrant?" No. And then they sat
bravado
outside.
About Simon Dunkel.
What'd you say?
Just a bit of bravado, right? Got a bit of
confidence
about even at a young age, though, right?
For a 14-year-old kid, it's bigger balls than I should have ever had. And so they proceeded to nail kids that were coming out of the party, but there were only 4 cops on shift at that point in Bexley at that time of night and whatever.
So you just had to leave in groups of 5 or 6.
So no, we when they nailed people and we saw they were all gone, we'd send people a whole bunches of people out saying, "If you're going to leave now. If not, you're going to have to wait till the next round." But yeah, it became a game, and of course, I mean they tried to kick me out of school for 10 days. Wanted me to pay back the $826 to the student council since they lost money on homecoming.
That's the funniest thing is your party was too cool, dude, and we didn't get any guests to ours. You owe us for the pizzas.
Oh yeah, we're gonna kick you out of school for 10 days. And so that was kind of humorous.
You've been fighting this fight for a while. Like in some weird way, you've been fighting the man, so to speak, for a long time, Simon.
Yeah,
it's just weird. I mean, I guess you can say that. I never looked at it that way, but then I moved on and got a career in radio after the State House. I mean, I got so fed up with the stuff at the State House and what they were doing to people. They had a conference committee over the budget for the July weekend and didn't send out $500,000 Native dependent children checks. And I helped this nurse through Merle Shoemaker's office down in Lancaster, whose husband went off with a 18-year-old secretary from Meade. Told her not to say anything. She said something to the paper, and then I was in a scene from the firm when I came into the work the next day. Given the choice to quit or be fired, I quit, lived in my car for 4 months in Wyoming, and got into radio. So that was kind of that.
What is it like? How do you feel now that broadcast is kind of the user base for it is getting smaller and smaller, and it's shifting to more story driven or podcasts of these private in-home recordings, kind of like what we're doing right now. What's that shift like in your mind? Is it a loss of an art? Is it a loss of an important resource?
Well, I mean, there's, it's a double-edged sword. You know what I mean? It's good and bad. I was especially a music producer. So I had a show called The Classical Collection, and it was the first commercial radio station program to simulcast a Philharmonic or orchestra, type thing live on the air.
That's awesome.
On Sunday nights. And yeah, did that with Naples Philharmonic, Naples, Florida. Also had a show called Bourbon Street Friday Night, which started, of course, on Bourbon Street, Dixieland, and ended up in progressive and blues by midnight. Did a blues show that was syndicated nationally in 40 markets for 4 years, and basically used the Casey Kasem format of features, so you knew what was coming, but you really didn't.
In that era, something in that era. Did you think that you had a sweet ass gig? Like, did you find radio to be a fun gig at the time you were doing it?
Yeah, I mean, I had a blast. I mean, the retirement plan sucks, but I mean, the experiences were just wild. I mean, I got to work with Tony Bennett and Ray Charles, and B.B. King, and cook dinner for Robert Lockwood and his band. You know what I mean? I mean, just on and on and on and on. And just like I said, Forrest Chump, just what? I mean, it was crazy and it's fun. But I mean, it just like I ran weed for Clarence Gatemouth Brown and the sax player Bill Sanders. Right.
See, that's what we're talking about. These are these stories, but I find it interesting. You know what's funny? Radio to me was always this career that almost like cannabis is now, where it seems like this really like fun, cool career. And the reality is it kind of is. But everyone that's in it, it always says, oh, you shouldn't come here. It's terrible. You don't want to do it. It sucks so bad. But it doesn't. It's better than working in an auto mechanic shop. It just is. But there is this mentality to protect it, to not let people in, but maybe they're trying to keep it real. It's one of those beefs I always had with radio guys. They'd always complain about, you don't want to have my job, even though I wake up early in the morning and I do my quick thing and I'm back in bed by noon and I'm dating supermodels. You don't want this terrible life that I have. You don't want this, sir. You don't want this. You don't want these 4 hours a day I have to bust my ass talking into a microphone. It's so hard. These mouth, these vocal. I'm like, shut, right? Like they get in cannabis folks, they get a little like this sometimes too. There are pros and cons. I don't know. What do you think? You get pissed when people bitch about really good jobs?
Yeah. I mean, the money for nothing, chicks for free protocol. I mean, I had a blast. I wouldn't throw anything at it. Yeah, I had to work 6-7 days a week, but it was like 4 or 5 hours a day. And I'm on a music assembly line. So, wow, that's tough. You know what I mean? And I wasn't one for formats. And, my boss at 99X and WZCR in Fort Myers Beach, I mean, they let me go. I mean, they'd give me, the format, what the guys from Chicago wanted us to play, and I'd look at it in my 4 or 5 hours and just turn it into a musical jumble and a flow kind of format and consolidate the ads. And on Saturday between 10 and 3, if I had to work, it was, 4.5 hours of music.
Yeah.
So I mean, I had fun with it, and it didn't bother me because my ratings were good and I was making them money. So, and the one cool story that I think you probably wanted to know, I think I talked to you about or said something to you once, maybe it was UBC. The radio station WZCR was owned by the court system in Lee County, so it was called Justice Broadcasting. And it was on the beach, and it was on the beach road on the way to Fort Myers Beach. And right across the street was the Coast Guard station. So part of my side gig was to play a song at a particular time to let the folks on the hall know whether it was cool to go or not. And so at a designated time, I would play a particular song to let them know.
That's a deep level commitment to it. I fucking love it.
And so, I'd play like Buddy Guy, Watch Yourself if they were out. Right.
That is so awesome.
And I'd play Clarence Gatemouth Brown, We're Out of Here, meaning frickin' go. You know what I mean? So yeah, and I mean, if it was like a regular format, I'd play like, Carole King, It's Too Late, right? Not go. right?
It's like a whole puzzle to crack when listening to Simon's playlist.
So, but yeah, I mean, and the thing was, there was never anything in writing. We weren't calling each other, we weren't texting each other. It was all stuff, you know, before hours and after hours conversations, and we're going to do this or that, and this is the time you're going to hear one of the two, and whatever. So then I'd go out the balcony and see what was up at the Coast Guard station in the middle of a long Led Zeppelin song, or BB King or something, and yeah, see what was going on at the Coast Guard station. So, and I knew a lot of those guys too. So I used to run single bales in my boat. I had a 28-foot Wellcraft with a 350 V8 Corvette engine in it. Called the last one. Spelled WON. I won it in a cancer raffle.
What I always think of society as we need the people to kind of come in and smash down the doors of the old, break down all these walls and barriers that are in place. And then we need someone else to come in afterwards and kind of build up the new system. And then we need the next set, which is that actually like following the rules for a little while to kind of see if it works. I picture you more as the wall, the barrier smasher. Where do you see yourself as? Do you think that you do better in helping build up the new system, or do you think you do better at pointing out what the fuck's wrong with everything and kind of getting them to tear down things one at a time?
It's both. I mean, I don't want to flake out on you, but it is kind of a little both. I like with the trips to dispensaries, I did it for 3 years in Columbus through Molina Medicaid County Job and Family Services Insurance. Blue Medicinals in Columbus ended up using the outline to get some of their patients there to their dispensary. Got to Toledo, rewrote the agreement with the Agency on Aging and the people here in Toledo, and then a year and a half in, and by the way, on that contract, I added dispensary trips to Michigan. So you're talking about walls and whatever. And so, yeah. And for a year and a half, they did it till I requested to go to Flint to get some single source RSO for cancer issue I was having. And then they cut me off summarily, cold, no explanation, no recourse, no due process. County courts said they don't recognize the program, the license, or the medication. Same things the Medicaid hearing people said, and everybody down the line. So that's, I went to NORML and asked them to declare the program unethical, unsafe, whatever. And they said, how about if we make you executive director of the Ohio chapter and you do it?
Well, those who can.
That's when the put up or shut up type of fucking thing. You're like, you know what?
Yeah. then you get the blind realization that you could screw this up royally if you do that, because you could, if you have the effect you appear to be after, you're probably going to cause things to be held up, shut down, investigated, whatever. And do you really want to do that when we're in a momentum path towards recreational? So it became a real sort of dilemma for me. But I still kept saying what I'd been saying since November, December of 22. I didn't, stay quiet, but I also didn't declare or put any press releases saying blah, 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 blah. Right.
Yeah.
Because discussing it with people at the national office and stuff, it just, I did have to agree with them if we did get the attention that we might get, it could be a negative. So backed off of it till basically now, where I think you saw at the issue 2 event BCU, I brought up the situation of intent. Because if you look back to DeWine's trip to Colorado, it wasn't like-minded people in the industry. It was regulatory and enforcement, And then you look at what they did with the Ohio program and the loss of patients, the massive exodus of patients over the time frame that it existed. I can tell you from being in radio and knowing demographics and ratings, no audience moves organically like that without some sort of impetus. And it wasn't a TikTok challenge or anything. So they must be having similar problems to what I'm having, which is the discrimination and, being singled out, denied medical care, all of it. So, we have to address that stuff. And my whole thing is you can't spread the manure on a larger field when you realize what the problems are.
Yeah.
You can't deny social equity. You can't deny, the whole anti-discrimination language situation. And geez, criminal justice reform. And we can't give all the bloody money to the police. I mean, geez,
Yeah.
we're gonna raise all this money and let them arrest us a little more. I mean, it just, yeah, this sort of flogging ourselves to exist. Why do we do that?
Well, let's go here. What do we want to happen, or what do you hope happens, or what do you think can happen, or I guess what are we trying to put in action? So Ohio is sitting in this kind of gray area as we're waiting for bills to be signed and rules will happen, and then they'll make rules and people will challenge rules and lawsuits will happen. We know that eventually, sometime late summer, early fall, late fall, we'll get adult use sales. They're going to sell a bunch of weed. Medical is going to shrink to 10% as it does in every state over the next couple of years. So what can we do, or what can NORML do, or what can you do, Simon? How can we help the problem? Let's kind of finish there. We know we have some problems. We can't control a lot of them, but we have some ways. How can we help, and what can we do realistically to make our voices heard?
Yeah, I mean that, it basically goes to straight legislative contact, with not just the Ohio legislature and people like Representative Callender, but all of them. You can't just say, "Well, I'm gonna let my legislator." No, you've got to let all 130 of them, or whatever it is at this point, know that this is the stance you need to take. Here's issue 2. Here's the original language. This is what we voted for. We knew we were voting for it, and this is what we want. You guys want to be political originalists? Here's the original language. Do it.
Mhm.
you know, and then we work from there. But we have to get the social equity stuff. We have to get criminal justice reform. We have to get anti-discrimination language. Otherwise, you're just, like I said, spread the manure on a larger field. What you didn't learn anything from the fiasco of medical. And if you listen to the people in the Senate, they think that recreation, or that medical went so well that we have to expand it to recreational. I mean, there's a delusion going on there.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
that's a weird stance to take, that it's so successful, given Ohio has not been a unanimously successful program. Our neighboring state, Pennsylvania, they're like 3% of the population has a medical card. Everyone complains, but it's still a more successful program than Ohio is for that. All right,
Yeah.
last question, Simon,
Sure.
as we kind of wrap up here on the show. What product that you can't get medicinally are you super pumped that you'll finally may be able to get adult use now in Ohio? Because I can see the medical program or the state having issues with transporting you over state lines because of its federal illegality. I mean, I don't get it, but I do get it. So what product are you missing out on, or what are we excited for with adult use coming down the road?
Well, I'd like to see, like they're working on commerce, interstate commerce currently federally, and I'd like to see that follow through. Just because been able to get a lot more help from people in Michigan than I have been in Ohio, because people in Ohio are half scared.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
And the
that's the
price
issue that
difference
one
is
has.
quite extreme. The price difference is quite extreme too. And when you're on a fixed income, or, you really working within a budget, having that option for choice can make a big difference to your functionality. So yeah, that's
Right. And I met farmers, and I'm working with some farmers in Michigan. So when you get to that level, it's a different game, because then you can trade services, trimming, and different
Yep.
situations, and work with each other. And I can get what I want and or need at a base price from the person that's producing it. So
As we
that's kind of what I have to do. I mean, I make $1,242 a month plus $29 in food stamps. So I mean, I don't have a lot of wiggle room.
Exactly. You don't have a lot of wiggle room. As we wrap up, what is the best thing? What is the best way that we can help out Ohio NORML? What is the best thing that patients and advocates of trying to push and see through some of this stuff and be a part of it? What can we do that will help make the most difference with your fight and Ohio NORML?
Yeah, I mean, just support it. I mean, I do plan shortly out to put out basically a statement about what's going on, and hopefully get people to support that. I'm considering starting a website to help support and garner the lobbying effort we need to put together, because I don't feel it's really concentrated enough right now. There's nobody really focusing. on it. I mean, we got the issue 2 thing, that was great, but I think there needs to be sort of a constant drone for the legislature,
Mm-hmm.
and we just have to keep it up. And we have to, swing at every pitch. Whatever they put out, we have to make a statement and hold the stand and write all the legislators about it, and let them know our stance. But I'm in a position right now where I've got health things going on, so I'm not sure how quickly I'm going to be able to act on things. But in the meantime, before I can get things started, it's just keep banging on the legislature, and specific agencies as well. I mean, the Commerce Department. Let the Commerce Department know what you want out of the rec program while they're considering it.
Yeah.
Don't wait till they've done everything in November and get pissed off over it. Use examples. Say you like what Oklahoma did, or Washington was good until they went for 37% taxes. Whatever focus or facet you want to spin on it, but do it. Have comparisons. Speak intelligently. Don't be threatening. And recognize them for making the progress they've made. Granted, it's been cathartic at best, but you got to try to give them credit, make them feel positive about themselves too. It'll get you farther than screaming at them.
We will put some links to the division of the Cannabis Control. We're actually in open feedback time right now. You can follow up on some of those. And unless you're on the email list, you may not even know that. I just picture, by the way, someone so angrily screaming, like, "Give me my way!" Like, it's not helping, right? I also, Simon, I think you used a term that describes me accurately. Dustin Kava, I am a swing at every pitch kind of guy. I have just seen a moment, and I don't know if it's going to work out or not, but hell yeah, I'll take a swing. I strike out a lot. That's what I realized. I'm comfortable with that. But every once in a while.
Well, we talked
hit a
about
nice
things
long
I've
drive.
done. We haven't talked about things I failed at, right?
No, that's for the second show, Simon. We'll bring you back on. This is a pump you up episode. Then we're like the military. We'll tear you right back down on the next
That's
episode.
okay.
We'll find out all your faults. I love that shit too. Don't worry.
No,
We'll
I
get you
grew up in a
back on.
family of strong women. I'm used to that.
I don't know how to take that. I am quite a strong woman. I'm proud to say that.
Now, wait a
Basically,
minute.
Wayman.
No,
Exactly. We've been talking with Simon Dunkel, the executive director of Ohio NORML. You can check out some of the links in the comments below to follow up on some of the stuff we talked about today. Thank you, Simon, for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, let's say goodbye to Simon here, Dustin Kava. Let's get some of this going here on the show. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Because Cannabis. Brand new episodes every single Wednesday, 4:20 p.m. on YouTube. Thursdays on Spotify with video or anywhere that you listen to audio podcasts. Give us a subscription. Clickety-clack that finger below. Give us a follow. If you're on Spotify, give us a like or a follow, whatever it is on Apple Podcasts. Don't go to publicradio.com. They're done. We appreciate your likes there. But anywhere else you listen to it, follow us at MeetWM socially. Because Cannabis on LinkedIn, that may be the most active feed we got going right now. Check us out. Dustin Kava, as always, wonderful to see you, sir.
Yeah, heck yeah. What a great show.
What a great show indeed. All right, everyone. You guys have a great week. We'll see you guys next week, everybody. Bye.